speaking about his desire, his commitment to revive awareness of the value of ancient Indian knowledge among young Indians. As an Indian, I feel rather privileged and fortunate when I hear this. As a matter of fact, I think we Indians have been benefiting from the force of this commitment for a very long time, ever since His Holiness set his foot in India in 1956. So that's almost 60 years back. I think this commitment has been enforced, effectively been enforced for such a long time. So we feel very fortunate, his blessing has been pervading in this land of India since the first time he visited in 1956. Now, before I proceed, let me just start by examining what His Holiness is implying when he states his fourth commitment. So he stated that he has a mission, and the mission is to revive awareness of the value of ancient Indian knowledge among young Indians. So he's talking about two things here. He talks about ancient Indian knowledge, and he's talking about the target being young Indians. Why does he talk about ancient Indian knowledge? His Holiness says that he's aware of the value of ancient Indian wisdom from first-hand experience. And you might have heard him, he often describes himself as a messenger of ancient Indian thought. His Holiness says, very often he says that physically I'm a Tibetan, but since childhood I have studied philosophy, logic, and psychology in the Nalanda tradition. The great scholars of Nalanda University, he says, are our teachers, and their writings are our textbooks. So from that point of view, His Holiness, he says, I think I'm more Indian than many of you who follow an education system set out by the British. As most of you would be aware, the education system in India was established by the British way back in the 19th century. And it's that system that we still follow. I too am a product of that system. So it's quite right that we have very little understanding of ancient Indian wisdom, and His Holiness is very right when he says that he feels more Indian than we Indians are, because his exposure to Indian wisdom, ancient Indian wisdom, is much more thorough than ours. And the other aspect that he mentions in this mission is that he says, it's targeted at the young Indians. Why does he say that? Is because he feels that most modern Indians have lost touch with their ancient heritage. Now, as I said, I'm going to explore the objective and the scope of this mission, the fourth commitment. So in order to explore it extensively, I think we need to examine the various elements, the various dimensions, aspects of this commitment. So in my opinion, there are four different aspects to this commitment. The first aspect is realizing that modern society in the world at large, and in particular in India, although it has materially prospered and developed, is extremely, is afflicted with stress and anxiety, although it is developed and advanced. So that's the first aspect, realizing that modern society is afflicted with stress and anxiety, including in India. So what makes modern society so afflicted with stress and anxiety? The second element of the fourth commitment is the cause, where His Holiness talks about the deficiencies in the modern education system being responsible for the present state of modern society, the afflicted state that we see in modern society. And the third element that he talks about through this fourth commitment is he suggests a remedy. And the remedy is that this mission can realize its goal, meet its desired end, when you combine ancient wisdom with modern curriculum in a secular way. And the fourth element of this fourth commitment would be to explore what are the possible candidates that fit this description, which are capable of integrating with modern curriculum in a secular way. And here we would explore what makes ancient Indian knowledge qualified to help us realize this mission. So this is the aspect. The fourth aspect is what I will delve on deeper. The other aspects I'll just cursorily, briefly look at. So the first aspect, as we mentioned, is realizing that modern societies, although it is extremely developed and advanced, is essentially afflicted with a lot of stress and anxiety. There are a lot of development and growth indices that one can look at, which kind of prove that the world at large has experienced a lot of development and advancement, but most of it is material. So we talk about measures like GDP. The world GDP has increased almost 6 times from being 11 trillion in the year 1960s to about 80 trillion in 2017. Even in India, the GDP has increased. The GDP per capita has increased almost 3 times in the last 25 years. Life expectancy in India has increased from, I think around 44 in the year 1965 to about 70 in 2015, which is roughly the same as it is for the world. And there are other measures also other data statistics that we could look at. There's one statistic that stands out. In India, the government expenditure on education has increased as a share of GDP. It has increased nearly 50% from about 2.3% in 1960 to about 3.3% in 2010. But at the same time, there's a darker side to all this development. One knows that all this material development has not really yielded general well-being. So there are measures, there are lots of studies that have been done, and there's one particular measure that stands out. And people have done studies to see how widespread depression is amongst the general population in the world. So the prevalence of depression as a percentage of population in India in particular, I think, it stands at about 3.5% of the population. In 2019, it was about 3.5%, which is roughly the same as that for the world. And it's said that in the last 25 years, these numbers have nearly doubled. So one sees that, although there's been a lot of material development, a lot of material advancement has taken place, in general, the general well-being of the population, of the people, of the masses has not kept up. Now, the second element of the fourth commitment that we mentioned was the cause, and His Holiness says that it's because of deficiencies in modern education. And what he says is that modern education cultivates only enhancing our marvelous intelligence. It's also about the need to develop warm-heartedness. And this is where I think modern education system lacks. This is what His Holiness says. It lacks in developing warm-heartedness amongst its students. He says that modern education evolved in the West with the emergence of the Industrial Revolution, and as such, there's a greater need for people to understand disciplines like science and mathematics, because the goals of modern development are essentially materialistic. He also says that one thing that stands out with the modern education system, he gives an example. He says that when young children, school children go to school, they're very open and friendly. But as they progress through the school, they become a lot more suspicious because of the environment that prevails in the schools. They become insecure, they become suspicious. They start paying more attention to secondary differences amongst themselves, such as religion, color, economic background. And here in India, there's also another factor that people look at, the caste that one belongs to. So, these are all the deficiencies that he points out. And he also says that, students in modern schools, including in India, they're not taught how to tackle anger. They're not taught how to tackle fear or anxiety. And in the absence of any other solution, in the absence of any particular guidance in this direction, they turn to things like drugs and alcohol for relief. So what is the remedy? That's the third element. The remedy is to see whether modern curriculum can be adopted and whether it can be integrated with ancient wisdom. And here he mentions that ancient wisdom needs to be uh, based on logic and reasoning in order for it to be integrated with modern curriculum. Otherwise, it won't be accepted. It needs to be capable of standing up to scrutiny from secular academic perspective. So that being said, if that is the desired end, what are the possible candidates for this kind of integration? Are there any thought systems that exist, ancient thought systems that exist, which satisfy these qualifications? Now that's the fourth element, and this is the one that I would like to explore a little more. So what makes ancient Indian knowledge qualified to help us realize this mission? Now these are His Holiness's thoughts. He says that ancient Indian knowledge, with its thorough understanding of the workings of our mind and emotions, is suitable to be combined with the modern education system because it helps us tackle destructive emotions and achieve peace of mind. He says from his own experience, he's found it very helpful to realize that afflictive emotions are not grounded in reality, whereas compassion can be cultivated on the basis of reason. And that's where this qualification for the wisdom, the system, the thought system needs to be grounded in logic. It needs to be grounded in scientific understanding and investigation. And hence, what he says that the Indian education, the ancient Indian knowledge system is suitable for integration with the modern curriculum. Why? Because for more than 3,000 years, he says that there has been a persistent investigation of mind and emotions in India. Techniques for calming and focusing the mind, as well as developing insight, shamatha and vipassana have been used to tackle emotions. And he says that Buddha was a product of such traditions. Now, that being said, ancient Indian thought systems have successfully mapped the entire structure of the mind and its workings, essentially through access to tools like
you have 2 minutes.
So essentially through access to tools like shamatha and vipassana. In particular, the practice of vipassana that provides us the analytical insights to be able to map such subtle phenomena like the mind and its workings. That's highly developed in the Indian spiritual systems. So in order to further emphasize this point, let me just read out a couple of verses to you. These verses are very beautiful and they talk about the value of vipassana. So please bear with me. These verses are not in Tibetan or in, English, but one verse is in Sanskrit and the other one is in Prakrit, one of the Prakrit languages. So the first verse says, Ayata chakku loka vipassi, lokasa bhagam jani, uddhav bhagam ajani, tiryam bhagam ajani, ehi machi, sandhima vidita, esa vire pasamsiye ye baddhe padi moi. So the verse, I'll just explain the meaning of this verse. It says that I began to abide in this body, lok, and understand the inner workings of the body. And I obtained this eye, the eye of insight, chakku or chakshu in Sanskrit, with which I could see further and deeper. With this eye of insight, I realized the nature of this physical body, its lower parts, adho bhagam, its middle parts, uddha bhagam, its upper parts, tiryam bhagam. I understand its entirety, having investigated its parts, primary, secondary, vertical, horizontal, diagonal. So I've investigated it in its entirety. And what did I discover? Ehi machei, it says, I realize it is death. This body is death. It is impermanent. It is fleeting. It is insubstantial. Sandhim vidita, and I also realized that there's an accumulation of craving and desire on the mind stream. There's an accumulation, a union, sandhim, of hatred and anger on this mind stream. And while seeing thus, I refine my instincts. Esavire pasamsiye ye badde padimoi, and thus I become a victor, one who has unentangled all these obstacles. So, using the eye of wisdom, jnana chakshu, special insight to experience and examine reality within the sphere of one's own experience, one realizes where obstacles arise from, and hence also how to eliminate them. I'll just read out one short verse and then I'll stop. The other verse says, Yo Vishwabhi Vipashyati Bhuvana Sanchapashyati Sanaparshadati Dvisha. One who sees with Vipassana the pervading poison in the world within. One who sees with the right view, he thus goes beyond all hatred, all desire, and all afflictions. Now, this all should sound familiar to us. It is a language that is very familiar to us and the language we often use in our study, in our debate. So one might be wondering what are the sources of these verses. Indeed, one might even wonder what sutras these verses belong to. I'll tell you, the first verse in Prakrit is actually a verse that Bhagavan Mahavir had spoken, while the second verse in Sanskrit is a verse from the Rig Veda. So the first verse is from the Jain teachings, while the second one is from the Vedic teachings. Thus, we find that the emphasis that the Jain teachings and the Vedic teachings place on the value of Vipassana, it is a form of meditation that we Buddhists share with the Jains and the followers of the Vedic religions. It is this practice of Vipassana that His Holiness often says sets Indian wisdom apart from other thought systems, and it is found in the Jain teachings as well as the Vedic teachings, in addition to the Buddhist teachings. So as custodians of the Buddhist teachings, it would be nice if we can explore the explanation of Vipassana in other systems also. Now, with this thought, I would like to end my talk. Let me end it with a sincere prayer for a very long life for His Holiness. I pray that His Holiness continues to guide us in our spiritual endeavors for a long time. Namo Buddhaya.